911, what is your emergency?
Have you ever wondered in the middle of the night how your phone can call emergency services even when there's no signal? Or better yet, how it can ring even without a SIM card? How does that even work? Why does it happen? And when did it all begin? Welcome to Midnight Reflections, where curiosity never sleeps. Now, let's find out. Where curiosity never sleeps. The idea of having special numbers for emergencies is crucial to maintain public safety and security. But what many people don't know is that emergency numbers are actually a fairly recent invention. They didn't even exist until the early 20th century. Back then, if someone wanted to contact the police, fire brigade, or ambulance, they had to dial a regular number and wait their turn for someone to answer. They might have been stuck listening to patriotic songs or that dreadful elevator music. You know the one, just like we do today. Now imagine that during an actual emergency. Some companies tried to help, but when accidents happened, injured people were left waiting, and disasters got worse. That's exactly what happened in the 1930s. During a major fire on a residential street in Wembley, London, a neighbor tried calling the fire brigade, but he was left on hold for far too long. By the time help arrived, it was too late. 5 women died in that fire. Now, this wasn't the first time lives were lost because of call delays, but in this particular case, the victim's grandfather stepped up. He refused to stay silent. He sent a complaint to the Times newspaper, and it caused a massive public reaction. Soon, more and more people who had faced the same issue began to speak out. And that's how, in 1947, the very first emergency number was introduced in London. It was just 3 digits long, but at the time, it only worked in London. And things stayed that way for a full 20 years, until 1967. That's when the National Association of Fire Chiefs in the United States formally requested that the government establish a dedicated number, one that would allow any citizen to quickly reach emergency services. But it took another 9 years after that request, until 1976, for real progress to begin. That year, the National Academy of Sciences released a powerful report. It revealed shocking statistics about the number of deaths and injuries caused by car accidents in the United States. The report highlighted how difficult it was for ambulances to reach accident victims on time, and they didn't hold back. They called it the neglected epidemic of modern society. This report brought national attention to one clear message. There needed to be a dedicated emergency phone number, a number that could get an ambulance to someone as fast as possible. Just 1 year later, in 1977, a meeting was held between the Federal Communications Commission and the American Telephone and Telegraph Company, better known as AT&T. The goal? To create a number, one that any citizen could call to report any emergency, not just for ambulances or fires. One of the main requirements? It had to be short and easy to remember, because in an emergency, a caller might be panicked, overwhelmed, and barely able to think straight. They also agreed that the number had to be completely unused, one that no one had ever dialed before. Eventually, they settled on a now famous number, 911, and declared it the official emergency number to be used across the entire United States. One of the key conditions at the time was that absolutely nothing should get in the way of making an emergency call, so they wouldn't repeat the same tragic mistakes of the past. And it worked. The meeting was a success. The decision was well received, and people were relieved, even excited. That's why most countries around the world started to see emergency numbers as essential, something no society could afford to live without. Year after year, more and more nations created their own emergency numbers, and even when mobile phones became common, emergency calls remained the top priority. In fact, they still are. Even if your phone has no signal, even if it has no SIM card, emergency numbers can still go through. So, how does that actually work? Before we dive into how it happens, we first need to understand the basic mechanism behind how a phone call works. So here's the deal. When you call someone, as soon as you dial their number, your phone sends a signal to the nearest cell tower. These signals are then picked up by the antenna installed on that tower. The antenna's job is to take those electrical signals and convert them into electromagnetic waves so they can travel freely through open air. These waves then jump from one tower to another until they finally reach a tower near the person you're trying to call. At that point, the signal is sent from the closest tower to their phone. This is the process that happens every single time you hit that call button, even during an emergency call. Wait a second. Doesn't that mean an emergency call still needs a network to work? After all, how else could your phone send a signal to a cell tower? So, how can it work when there's no network? Let's break it down. The phone you're holding right now contains a tiny chip called a SIM card. This SIM card uses a technology known as GSM, short for Global System for Mobile Communications. Here's how it works. If your mobile carrier can't connect your phone to any of its own towers, because, say, you're in a dead zone, then GSM technology kicks in. Your phone automatically starts searching for any available signal nearby, even if it belongs to a different company. And in that moment, your phone is allowed to borrow the other company's signal, but only for emergency calls, even if you have no credit, even if you've never used that network before. You can still call for help. It's a system built through agreements between mobile providers, all to make sure you can reach emergency services in a time of danger. But now let's go even deeper. What if your phone doesn't have a SIM card at all? How can you make an emergency call then? The truth is, the answer to that question depends on which country you're in. Some countries don't allow emergency calls, unless there's a SIM card in the phone, even though a SIM isn't actually necessary for the call to go through. Here's why. Signals can be transmitted from your phone without a SIM card, thanks to the built-in antenna, just like the one we mentioned earlier. That same antenna inside your phone is capable of sending signals to nearby cell towers. The SIM card's role is something else entirely. It identifies which network you belong to. It also links your phone to your personal number and stores your account and identity data. But in the case of an emergency call, none of that information is needed. That's why the SIM card isn't technically required, as long as the country you're in allows it. Places like the UK and the United States, for example, do allow emergency calls from phones that don't have a SIM card. Because in a life or death situation, what matters isn't your account or your number. It's that someone hears you. Now, of course, there are always exceptions to the rule. Take satellite phones, for example. As the name suggests, these phones don't rely on cell towers at all. Instead, they connect directly to satellites in orbit. Then there's another fascinating technology. Used in many countries around the world, it's called What 3 Words. Here's how it works. This system divides the entire surface of the Earth into around 57 trillion tiny squares. Each square, just 3 meters by 3 meters in size, is assigned a unique combination of 3 random words. Through a special app or service, emergency responders can send you a link. And with just a few taps, you can tell them exactly which square you're in, anywhere in the world. So even if you're lost in the middle of nowhere, they'll know exactly where to find you. Because of how accurate and efficient this system is, countries like the United States, Germany, and Singapore have started to rely on it heavily for emergency services. And since everything around us is becoming smart, some companies have even created devices that automatically contact emergency services on their own. For example, newer models of the Apple Watch have built-in sensors that can detect if the person wearing it has been in an accident. Within seconds, it can call emergency services and send them your exact location without you pressing a single button. Pretty incredible, right? In the end, remember, there are two types of emergencies. The first, real ones, involving lives, safety, and property. Definitely important. The second, you forgetting to hit like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to turn on that bell icon. Now you know. Got more midnight questions? Drop them in the comments, stay curious, and I'll see you in another Midnight Mystery.